winding road. I've got a name, I've got a name.
These 25 forgotten 70s songs were banned, censored, or buried by bigger hits. One got its writer kicked out of his own band. Here are 25 you forgot were pure gold. Let's start with number 25, Pilot of the Airwaves, 1979.
Happy just to hear your voice saying this is for the girl who didn't sign her name.
It sounds like a love song to a DJ, but this was a farewell letter to a disappearing world. British singer-songwriter Charlie Dore released Pilot of the Airwaves at the tail end of 1979, right before FM radio's golden age began fading into automation. It climbed to number 13 on the US Billboard Hot 100, but was her only major hit. The song's character sends nightly messages to a late-night radio host, "'Cause I need a friend," hinting at loneliness under disco lights. At a time when people actually formed bonds with unseen voices in dark rooms, this track captured something fading fast. But why did such a heartfelt gem vanish so quickly from public memory? And more importantly, what else have we forgotten? Now, drifting into number 24, Lady, 1970. It wasn't Brian or Carl, it was Dennis Wilson who wrote this heartstopper, and few even noticed. Before his solo Pacific Ocean Blue, 1977, Dennis quietly released Lady as a B-side in 1970. It was later renamed Fallen in Love, soft piano, delicate falsetto, worlds apart from surf pop. Dennis, the only Beach Boy who actually surfed, had a soul full of storms. By 1970, he was entangled with Charles Manson's cult, addicted to alcohol and falling apart. Yet he produced one of the most vulnerable tracks in the band's orbit. Could this fragile love song have been a quiet cry for help? And why does it sound even more haunting now, knowing what came after? Let's move on to number 23, Question, 1970.
In a world of persecution that is burning its greed.
How do you make war sound beautiful and terrifying in the same breath? The Moody Blues opened the 70s with Question, a furious anti-Vietnam track cloaked in orchestral elegance. Released as the lead single from A Question of Balance, it reached number 2 in the UK and number 21 in the US. The song flips between acoustic urgency and lush harmonies. Justin Hayward's lyrics ask, "Why do we never get an answer when we're knocking at the door?" It's a philosophical plea wrapped in prog rock grandeur. Critics called it too complex for radio, but it became a fan favorite in live shows. Why does a protest song still feel so intimate? And what other anthems did the era quietly hide behind the headlines? Moving on to number 22, Stone Cold Sober, 1977. Most bands write about getting drunk. Crawler made sobriety sound like a bar fight. Formed from the ashes of Backstreet Crawler after guitarist Paul Kossoff's death, Crawler dropped Stone Cold Sober in 1977. A fierce whiskey-stained blend of blues rock and pure tension. It never charted in the US, yet it became a cult radio staple thanks to its blistering riff and swaggering vocal from Terry Wilson Slessor. The band toured with Kansas, Robin Trower, and AC/DC, and still couldn't break through. Why did this killer track never get its due? And what does it take for a song to survive long after the band disappears? Let's dive into number 21, Same Old Scene, 1979. Before synth pop had a name, Roxy Music laid the blueprint, then walked away from it. Same Old Scene appeared on Roxy's 1979 album Flesh and Blood, a sleek, mature evolution from their glam rock chaos. Brian Ferry's lyrics are cold, smooth, and biting. Nothing lasts forever, of that I'm sure. The song introduced Roland drum machines and sophisticated synth textures that bands like Duran Duran and Talk Talk would build empires on. Yet it peaked at just number 12 in the UK, largely forgotten in favor of More Than This years later. How does a song invent the future and get buried by it? And what other futuristic fragments did the 70s quietly leave behind? Let's ease into number 20, Love and Affection, 1976.
For romancing with a friend.
It starts almost like a whisper, then it breaks you open with precision. When Joan Armatrading released Love and Affection in 1976, she became the first Black British female singer-songwriter to reach the UK top 10. It peaked at number 10 and stayed on the charts for 11 weeks, yet today it's barely mentioned. The arrangement is minimalist, gentle acoustic guitar, dry drum beat, and a harmony vocal from Clark Peters. Yes, The Wire's Lester Freeman. But it's Joan's voice, smoky, direct, unflinching, that pulls you in. Her lyric, "I'm not in love, but I'm open to persuasion," felt like a radical honesty in a decade of overblown metaphors. Why does this track still sound like emotional truth stripped bare? And why did radio stations hesitate to embrace such intimacy? Floating into number 19, Refuge of the Roads, 1976.
And you get in free with the one-man band.
Hajira was the album Joni Mitchell wrote on the road, literally, and Refuge of the Roads might be its purest emotional checkpoint. In 1976, Joni drove cross-country alone after the collapse of her relationship with drummer John Guerin. Refuge closes the album, blending poetic reflection with jazz textures featuring Jaco Pastorius on fretless bass. It never charted, it was never a single, but inside its lyrics, Mitchell hides confessions of spiritual crisis, fleeting freedom, and her visit to Buddhist guru Chogyam Trungpa. She sings, "I pulled off the highway to rest for a while, my conscience was aching." This is not just a travel song, it's a pilgrimage. But how many listeners knew they were being taken somewhere sacred? Here's where it gets heavier. Number 18, I'd Love to Change the World, 1971.
Everywhere is freaks and Harris, dykes and ferries.
10 years after had just electrified Woodstock. But in 1971, they went from jam band heroes to prophets of doom. I'd Love to Change the World opens with one of the eeriest guitar riffs of the decade. Alvin Lee sings about poverty, war, overpopulation, pollution, and political chaos in just 3 minutes. The track peaked at number 40 in the US, yet radio hesitated to fully embrace it. Why? Because the lyrics ask questions without offering answers. Tax the rich, feed the poor, till there are no rich no more. It was too true and too uncomfortable. The song exploded in popularity years later, sampled by J. Cole, covered by bands like Tesla, and used in films and video games. But when it first hit airwaves, were we even ready to hear it? Moving on to number 17, Life's Been Good, 1978.
Forget the price. Ain't never been there. They tell me it's nice.
Joe Walsh jokes, but he does it with a scalpel. Released in 1978 on But Seriously Folks, Life's Been Good hit number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became Walsh's signature solo hit. But behind the comedy, limos, hotel destruction, spaced out lyrics, is a brutal satire of rock star excess. Lines like, "I live in hotels, tear out the walls, I have accountants pay for it all," were based on real behavior. Walsh said many of the wildest lines were just his actual life. His Maserati, it really went 185, and he really couldn't find his house. But what makes the track more than a novelty is its self-awareness. This was a man melting down in public with a laugh track. So why do we still nod along like it's just a party anthem? Stepping into number 16, The Things We Do for Love, 1976.
Bets and then you pay the price. The things
love, the things we do for love.
10cc had already delivered the haunting I'm Not in Love, but The Things We Do for Love offered a completely different brilliance. Released in 1976, it hit number 5 in the US and number 6 in the UK, yet it's rarely discussed today. Written after Godley and Cream left the band, it was the first single by the remaining trio. Beneath the breezy melody is lyrical tension. Communication is the problem to the answer. Critics dismissed it as soft pop, but it showcased 10cc's unmatched craft in harmonies and layered production. It sold over 1 million copies globally and vanished from pop canon. How can a million seller just fade into memory? Now cruising into number 15, The Year of the Cat, 1976.
She comes out of the sun in a silk dress, running like a watercolor.
Al Stewart's The Year of the Cat is cinematic songwriting at its most luxurious. Released in October 1976, it never broke the Billboard Top 5, peaked at number 8, but remained a radio favorite for years. With lyrics inspired by Casablanca and Vietnamese astrology, it tells a story like a film reel. Alan Parsons produced it with lush orchestration, and Phil Kenzie's saxophone solo, recorded in one take, became iconic. Incredibly, Stewart almost left the track off the album. The sax solo changed his mind. But why did such a richly layered classic get quietly outshined by his less ambitious songs? And what other classics were nearly shelved forever? Let's move into number 14. Amaruse, 1973. Before Don't Go Breaking My Heart made her a household name, Kiki Dee recorded Amaruse, a sensual, understated ballad released in 1973. Originally written in French by Véronique Sanson, the English lyrics were penned by Gary Osborne. The song barely charted at number 13 in the UK and didn't break in the US, but Kiki's breathy delivery and orchestral arrangement made it a favorite among artists like Dusty Springfield. It explores vulnerability with rare control. I'm so in love with you, I can't pretend. A hit across Europe, but forgotten in the English-speaking world. Why do the most emotionally honest tracks vanish while gimmicks live forever? Next up at number 13, Wishing You Were Here, 1974. It's Chicago, but not as you remember them. Wishing You Were Here came out in 1974 on Chicago 7, peaking at number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100. Unlike their brassy rock sound, this track leans into mellow harmonies and beach-like atmosphere. Peter Cetera wrote it, but couldn't sing it due to vocal strain. Terry Kath stepped in. Even more remarkable, Carl Wilson, Dennis Wilson, and Al Jardine of the Beach Boys sang backup. It's a quiet masterpiece in a band known for loud statements. Why doesn't this song show up in retrospectives despite featuring voices from 2 legendary bands? Now spinning at number 12, Street Life, 1979. By the late 70s, jazz fusion wasn't topping charts, but Street Life nearly broke that rule. The Crusaders, with guest vocalist Randy Crawford, released this 11-minute masterpiece in 1979. It reached number 36 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and number 5 in the UK. Crawford's vocals, smoky yet effortless, turned this jazz-funk groove into a sultry anthem. The song captured the glamour and danger of nightlife. You play the street life because there's no place you can go. It's been featured in Jackie Brown, Shark Tale, and even Grand Theft Auto. So why does one of the slickest tracks of the decade still sound like a secret? Gliding into number 11, I Got a Name, 1973. Jim Croce died in a plane crash just 1 day before this song was released, September 21st, 1973. Unlike his signature Time in a Bottle, I Got a Name wasn't written by Croce. It came from Charles Fox and Norman Gimbel, but Croce made it personal. It's a tribute to his father who died before seeing his son's success. The track peaked at number 10 on Billboard and was later featured in The Last American Hero and Django Unchained. The line, "I've got a name and I carry it with me like my daddy did," hits harder when you know he was gone the next day. How can a song released posthumously feel like it knew all along? Next in the stack at number 10, Trouble Man, Marvin Gaye, 1972. Not What's Going On, not Let's Get It On. This is Marvin Gaye at his most cinematic and most overlooked. Released in 1972 as the title track for the blaxploitation film Trouble Man, the song blends funk, jazz, and soul into something sultry and sorrowful. Marvin wrote, arranged, and produced the entire soundtrack himself, a rare move at the time. The track peaked at number 7 on Billboard's R&B chart and number 53 on the Hot 100. It was later resurrected in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but for decades it sat in the shadows of his bigger hits. So how did one of the smoothest grooves of the decade become his most slept-on masterpiece? Now, sliding into number 9, Third Rate Romance, 1975. It's a cheating song, but it doesn't sound like one. The Amazing Rhythm Aces dropped Third Rate Romance in 1975, blending country, soul, and a hint of sarcasm. It hit number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the country chart in Canada. Lead singer Russell Smith paints two strangers in a diner deciding to betray their partners, but with uncomfortable calm. It's not passion, it's boredom. The lyrics feel like eavesdropping. He said, "You don't look like my type, but I guess you'll do." So why does this charming, cynical song still feel so disturbingly honest? Dropping in at number 8, Golden Years, 1975. David Bowie wrote Golden Years for Elvis Presley. That's not rumor, it's fact. Elvis declined, so Bowie kept it. Released in November 1975, the song became a top 10 hit in the US and UK. It debuted on Soul Train, where Bowie famously lip-synced awkwardly, visibly intoxicated. A moment as revealing as the lyrics themselves. Funky but paranoid, the track marked Bowie's transition into his thin white Duke phase, a character soaked in arrogance, alienation, and cocaine. Yet Golden Years sounds like celebration. That contradiction is Bowie at his most brilliant. Why does a song about glamour feel like it's falling apart from the inside? Creeping in at number 7, What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding, 1974. Before Elvis Costello made it famous, this song belonged to pub rock underdogs Brinsley Schwarz. Penned by Nick Lowe in 1974, it was a modest UK single. The message, raw and bitter, asked, "Where is the harmony?" at a time when idealism was dying. Costello's cover, 1978, gave it punk teeth, but the original version simmers with wounded hope. No irony, just weariness. Brinsley Schwarz never broke through. Their legacy? One nearly forgotten song that survived 3 musical revolutions. So how did a track dismissed in its time become an anthem that won't go away? Floating into number 6, Running on Empty, 1977. Jackson Browne wrote Running on Empty on tour buses, backstage floors, and motels, and it sounds like it. Recorded entirely on the road in 1977, the album captures a musician aging in real time. The title track hit number 11 on Billboard and remains Browne's most streamed song today. It's about burnout, but with momentum. I don't know where I'm running now, I'm just running on. Every line is lived in. Every note feels like 2 a.m. Why do we still chase dreams that already cost us everything? And why does this song still feel like it's chasing something or someone we never catch? Anchoring in at number 5, Sailing, 1975.
Home again, across the sea.
Rod Stewart built his image on swagger, but Sailing stripped it all back. Written by Gavin Sutherland in 1972, Stewart's cover hit number 1 in the UK in 1975 and became a cultural moment, used during British Navy broadcasts in the Falklands War. In the US, it barely cracked the top 60. too slow, too sincere, too vulnerable. But in Britain, it sold over 1 million copies. The haunting delivery of "I am sailing, I am flying, home again across the sea" became something bigger than a ballad. It was longing, national pride, and soft masculinity all at once. Why did America miss what Britain clung to? Surfacing at number 4, "Come and Get Your Love," 1974. Redbone made history. They weren't just a Native American rock band, they were the first to break the US top 5. "Come and Get Your Love" hit number 5 on Billboard in 1974 and sold over 1 million copies. Co-written by brothers Pat and Lolly Vegas, it combined swampy funk with pop flair and political pride. Despite success, Redbone faced racial barriers. TV performances were limited. Radio play was cautious. It took Guardians of the Galaxy 2014 to reignite its fame. And still, few know their full story, or that they protested Wounded Knee on national television. So how does a cultural milestone get written out of the music history it helped build? Now swaying into number 3, "Summer Breeze," 1972. Few songs smell like memories. Summer Breeze does. Seals and Crofts released it in August 1972, and it peaked at number 6 on Billboard. Critics called it soft rock, but it's more like auditory sunlight, warm, wistful, and strangely melancholic. The duo, devout Baha'is, embedded spirituality into the ordinary, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. Producer Louis Shelton added intricate guitar layers that made the chorus float. Rolling Stone later ranked it among the best summer songs of all time, yet it rarely gets serious analysis. Why does the lightest song on this list carry such a heavy emotional pull? Now dimming the lights for number 2, "Bell Bottom Blues," 1970. Eric Clapton wrote it on a napkin for Pattie Boyd. She was still married to George Harrison. Bell Bottom Blues was the other heartbreak on Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, overshadowed by the title track's guitar fireworks. But this one, it bleeds. Released in 1971 US, it reached only number 91 on the Billboard Hot 100. But its plea, "Do you want to see me crawl across the floor to you?" is unforgettable. Clapton later admitted he was drunk, depressed, and obsessed when he wrote it. Why do the quietest songs often carry the rawest truths? And finally, number 1, "Trouble," 1970. Trouble wasn't written for radio, it was written for survival. Cat Stevens wrote it while recovering from tuberculosis and a collapsed lung in 1969. By 1970, it became the emotional heart of Mona Bone Yacon, and later, the film Harold and Maude. Clocking in under 2 minutes, Trouble is a whisper of mortality. "You have done me wrong, but I'm still strong." It was never released as a single, no chart placement, but decades later it became a cult classic among musicians and filmmakers. Why do the songs we whisper to ourselves in private end up echoing the loudest? If you love forgotten music history like this, hit subscribe and keep exploring with us. Tap the screen to unlock more underrated classics and deep cuts from rock's golden age.